Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later as I don't want to be hoisted by my own petard. Instead, let's check out this guy from X-Transbots, who, may I say, looks absolutely hoist-delicious. MX-IXT is a new figure from X-Transbots and represents one of the more distinctive characters from the G1 cartoon's second season, its Hoist. This release is actually a bit of a cartoon-styled makeover for the toy, which was originally put out by X-Transbots about 3 years ago with a more traditionally toy-styled paint scheme. As far as the cartoon goes, Hoist put in some memorable appearances during the 1985 year of Generation 1, regularly cropping up in tandem with his partner, Grapple, and getting into all kinds of trouble along the way. Hoist even had a spotlight episode all of his own, with Hoist Goes Hollywood proving to be one of the more light-hearted capers from the early days of the franchise. Having already seen the original version of this toy in hand, it'll be really interesting to see how this new paint scheme compares today, and how it stacks up against other Masterpiece-style toys in my collection. Last thing before we begin, today's video comes courtesy of TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site in the video description. The plan for today is to give you my first impressions before getting a full review up on their blog soon. Right, here's X-Transbots Hoist in his box, and believe me, I'm going to be taking every opportunity to not say that third-party name, mostly because I'm not sure I'm entirely convinced how to pronounce it, but never mind. Now, you may notice something a little bit different with today's review, and that is the background. And yeah, if you're not familiar with my videos, then typically for unboxings, I go for a kind of neutral grey background, and that's lasted me pretty well till now, but I'm never one to you know, rest on my laurels, and do like to mix things up a bit occasionally. So I figured I'd try this, which is a more familiar setup for me for taking photos and the whatnot. But do you like it? That's the big question. Are you keen on what you see here and the kind of more colourful background, I suppose, or do you just prefer the old grey? And that's fine, because I do kind of like that as well. So let me know your comments. You know, drop me some feedback on which you prefer. Do you like the new look, or would you rather I just stick with Old Faithful? I will listen to the feedback, so really interested to hear what you have to say. Right now we've got a toy to check out, of course, and I'm pretty excited for this one actually. I already had this guy in hand, the original version anyway, the kind of non-cartoony repaint, the first one they did, and but that was a test shot, and if I'm completely honest, I didn't get on with it too well, but mostly because it had horrendous scratches in the paint. But if I recall, it was like that when it got to me, because you know, with test shots sometimes it is what it is. You know, sometimes they come from a reviewer prior to you know, they just get posted on or whatever, and if the previous reviewer, depending on who it is in the Transformers community, some are rougher than others with their toys, I think, and I can't remember who it was. I wouldn't be one to name names anyway, but whoever it was, it clearly put it through its paces, let's put it that way. So I was kind of a bit like, when it first arrived, but I am really looking forward to this guy today. And here you can see the box, the back of the box anyway, which is really quite interesting, and it's worth a bit of closer inspection. Now I say that because not only do we get the old tech spec down here. Now if you're not familiar with tech specs, that was all the rage back in the 80s during Generation 1. All of the packaging had them on the back, and indeed a lot of latter day generations as well, and they've kind of gone by the wayside these days, but that's what that's all about, including all his strength and intelligence and all of that kind of guidance. But what I was really referring to was this bit up here, which of course is a little diorama, and it's the kind of thing that X-Transbots often do on their packaging, but if you look closer you will see a couple of figures that are on the way that are kind of teased in the artwork, including their youth or toy version of Motormaster, beg your pardon, don't get those two mixed up, and yeah, really very excited for that one, and their Springer as well, because that one's causing a lot of comment at the moment. So but yeah, love that artwork, really into it. For today though, it's all about Hoist, isn't it? So let's go ahead and get that box open, and then we can see what we make of the toy. And it comes in a little clamshell just there in his vehicle mode. Man, I'd forgotten just how much stuff this guy comes with, my word. Now the toy comes in this little clamshell, and then inside a little plastic bag as well. It's kind of a thing that X-Transbots do sometimes. Right, let's run down the contents of this box. Well, firstly, you've got the instructions and the character card, if indeed that's your bag. You've then got this sizable crane arm accessory for the vehicle mode. You've then got these kind of pincer arms. This is like one-piece accessory for the vehicle mode as well. It's kind of a clip-on piece. And actually mine kind of came apart a little bit in the box, some of the balls, the ball joints. So I just had to put it back together a little bit, but all seems fine. You get these little accessories in this kind of pearly white plastic, and most of these are related to his hands, including, like, you know, there's extra little sort of cannons for his in place of his hands, and his little hammer and things like that. And then this little accessory which references the original G1 toy. You get these little pieces which actually all come separate, but they're all part of the same kind of little mini accessory, and it's the little model that him and Grapple build in the episode The Master Builders. They build it together. I can't remember, is it a communications device or a solar power thing? Solar power platform. I can't remember. Which one is it? I think it's a solar power platform. Right, here we go, TF Wiki, and solar power tower, there you go. You get these two accessories, which of course is a pair of owls, a little baby owl and its mum, from the episode Hoist and the Owls. No, I'm totally lying. I'm going to leave something like that in once and just see if anybody notices and picks me up on it. I bet they will. These are actually, of course, the alien masks that Hoist wears in Hoist Goes Hollywood, the classic episode Hoist Goes Hollywood. Love that one. And a couple of the other Autobots as well, like Trax and Sunstreaker and Warpath. And yeah, no, they all start off to Hollywood and wear these alien masks like you do. And there you go, in toy form. And of course you get this spare head, which is meant to look a little bit more like the Generation 1 toy as opposed to the cartoon, which is what this X-Transbots toy is going for. Then of course you have the toy itself, and my word, this thing looks pretty spectacular actually, right out the package. Really digging the finish on it. It's got a kind of nice metallic sheen to it, really kind of catching the light, and I think the green and some of the chrome and things like that, it's really making it very attractive indeed. I also think props to them for creating something that, I don't know, to my eye at least, doesn't look like a Transformer. Like, it's, you know, you could almost be thinking that this was just like a little model toy truck or something, because it's very, very clean. You know, no obvious panel lines. I mean, maybe like a couple just here in the kind of orange at the back. But, you know, certainly in the green sections, exceptionally clean. Tiniest little bit of kibble just under the rear wheel there. But other than that, exceptionally clean and very, very nice looking vehicle mode. You know, I mean, even from the back, and obviously we'll get into the kind of mechanics of that tow truck section in just a minute, but even from the back, I think it looks really, really quite tidy, really very good from every angle. I'm into it. I love the look of it. Love the look of it. Now, one thing I was asked to do in my recent Fans Hobby Naval Commander video, during the premiere chat anyway, was to weigh the figure. A couple of people were quite interested in how heavy it was, and actually during the premiere chat itself, I went off and weighed the thing, and I did say at the time, would people be interested in knowing the weights of these things? And a couple of people said they would, so let's give it a go. So we'll start off with old Hoist today. So there you go, 276 grams. It's really not very heavy at all. I mean, actually, weight-wise, you know, it doesn't feel too dissimilar from like your average kind of, you know, third-party or Masterpiece carbot, but yeah, not the heaviest, but still absolutely fine. All right, well, let's get into the detail of this guy. Now, firstly, on the front of the bumper here, you've got some really nice chrome, which looks absolutely fantastic, and some very, very attractive little orange translucent plastic there for the headlights and other sections. Indicator lights, things like that, and yeah, it just looks terrific, I think. Now the wheels are rubber, which is really, really good, and they do roll really nicely. I mean, all four wheels touch the ground, and yeah, it rolls, yeah, very loosely indeed. Of course, you've got a bit of chrome just on the wheels there as well. Looks great. You've got this really nicely done stripe all along the side of the vehicle mode there. I mean, that's very consistently applied from one panel to the next. It looks crisp as anything, and again, you know, arguably more kind of perfect, I suppose, than you might expect on a lot of kind of third-party Transformers toys especially. It's very, very crisp indeed. Really, I don't know, something about it just, again, looks like a model truck to me more than anything. And you've even got a little 4WD logo just there, so that's kind of cool. Tiny little wing mirrors on this guy. Now I do just want to quickly talk about the finish on the bonnet here and a few other sections, because it's really quite something. I mean, initially I thought this was die-cast, just because it's got that kind of metallic sheen to it, which is really, really very nice. But actually, I don't think it is. It's just kind of very, very, you know, kind of shiny paint, and does look metal, even though it's not. I think it is actually just sort of nicely painted plastic. But very, very attractive finish indeed. I mean, props to X-Transbots. This thing looks dead professional. Now, I don't mind necessarily the colour of the windscreen, but you can see a bit of robot gumph, including his head. just going on in there, and actually the head's slightly misaligned, so you know, straight out of the box, so that doesn't necessarily help. I'm sure I can tidy that up myself, but there you go. But it might have been good if indeed the windscreen was a slightly darker color, just to help block some of that out. But it's not bad, and actually it's, you know, we've seen worse on official Masterpiece toys, to be fair. Absolutely love his two little hazard lights on top. They look really, really cool. And again, there's a little close-up of all of the kind of back section, which does have some functionality. We'll go ahead and check that out in just a second, but there you go. You can see how it looks in its kind of folded up position just there. So yeah, it has to be said, major props to X-Transbots for the finish on this guy, and just kind of the general feel and look of it. I don't know, it really does feel like a very quality product. And I do think for a lot of third-party companies, nailing a car bot is kind of the it's kind of the ultimate test, really, isn't it, of how well they can kind of gel with the official line. Like some stuff, you know, kind of more slightly unusual stuff, I suppose, you can kind of go nuts with it, but car bots kind of have to stick to kind of a relatively tight template in order to kind of feel slightly cohesive with the official line, in my opinion. And I think this, you know, it's its own thing in terms of that nice shiny finish and whatever else, but I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So anyone that's in any doubts about X-Transbots these days, this thing to me looks the nuts. Right, so let's go ahead and check out that back section, shall we? Now, first thing you want to do is just fold it down like so, and there's even a little wheel just there so that it can kind of glide itself along the floor. And then what you want to do for towing other Masterpiece cars is just actually slide these little panels out like that to the side, and you'll see that there are little holes. That's where the tires from another Masterpiece car can kind of sit on. So here we go. Now we'll give it a little test. Now in the instructions, they show you to use Masterpiece tracks. I'm sure you can use other cars as well. But actually that looks pretty good to my eye. I think visually it certainly works. I will say that it's not the most stable. I mean, it will, you know, if you do it gently, it will kind of pull along. If you go too fast, he's definitely going to come off, you know, which could be a bit disastrous if old tracks needs well, you know, look after his finish. But, you know, it looks nice at least. It's not the most functional thing I've ever seen, but, you know, at least visually, it looks good, you know? Right, next, let's get this crane arm attached onto him. Now for this, it's going to go straight into these little tab holes just there. It's a bit of a tight fit, so, but you just go ahead and line it up and push. Kind of as hard as you can. I'll need to tidy it up a little bit. And there we go, we've got it in. I mean, actually, it's a very, very tight fit. And not only is it tight, actually, but having just articulated it quickly, I have found that actually it has a bit of a propensity for coming unplugged again. So it's tricky to get in, and it falls out pretty easily. So when you're moving it, particularly at this bottom bit just there, you might just want to have like, you know, one finger on it. There you go, you can see it's sort of threatening to come out already. So you might just want to kind of stabilize it with your hand. But actually the thing itself is quite articulated. It's got, you know, several points that can click there, there, and there. And then of course you've got this actual little crane section just there, which does have kind of a moving ability. So actually it's all on like a little spring. So all the little kind of claws, it all kind of moves together. Like that, so that's pretty cool. And it's just literally a little close-up on the detail there. It's even got this kind of little winch sort of look to it here. There's no functionality with that, that's just purely aesthetic, but yeah, it still looks pretty cool. It's appreciated, that kind of little detail. And there you go, again, you can see the little kind of claw section just there. I don't think it'd be necessarily strong enough to pick up anything of great detail anyway. I mean, I'm sure you could get the occasional kind of accessory in there or whatever else. I mean, like, you know, here you go, there's Masterpiece RC's gun, for example, so you can do stuff like that. But you know, typically speaking, it's a fun little thing all to itself, isn't it, as a cartoon nod. Of course, then you've got the other accessory for the back here. It plugs into the exact same spot in the same way, although this one's actually a lot easier to get in, I will say. And it's these kind of Dr. Octopus like tentacle arms that have got little claws on the end that will open up. They do just kind of open like that. The only thing with these is they do not stay up whatsoever. I mean, they're just like limp as anything, honestly. And that's they're all on tiny little ball joints the whole way along. And as I say, they had actually come separated on mine out, you know, straight out of the box. And yeah, they just they absolutely refuse to hang to hold up in any way. They just kind of flop down. So not really of much use, to be honest. Like I don't even think I could get that solidified, you know, into a pose to take a photo with. It's just so limp and loose. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could maybe try a bit of furniture polish on it or something, but it's going to be a hard one to fix. Still, if I'm honest, I'm not too worried about that claw accessory all the same. I mean, it's a shame it doesn't work better, but hey ho, I can live with it. Do you know what I mean? Everything else presents really nicely, so that's good. And here he is with just with a bit of a comparison with a couple of other, a couple of official Masterpiece cars, I should say. So you've got Masterpiece tracks again, just there, MP25 and MP28 Hot Rod. Two favourites of mine actually. I absolutely love these two toys. And there you go. You can see I think he compares pretty well actually. He's quite sizable. Fairly sort of robust, chunky looking truck form, which is nice, tow truck. And I think he fits in well. Here he is with another unofficial example, and this is Make Toys Downbeat, the premium version, a so-called premium version, which I just reviewed recently on the channel as well, so you can go ahead and check that out. And I think they work really well together. Again, it's a really lovely example of two different third-party companies absolutely nailing these respective vehicle modes. Here he is with Fans Toys Hunk, their Brawn, which I'm really big fan of. I've actually just included him on my top 10 list of toys, top 10 toys from last year, 2020, and I did a little article for TF Source, or part one of it anyway so far, and he's on there. And spoiler alert, and he's really nice. You can see the comparative green between these two, and I think they shape up pretty well together actually. Now here he is with the big dog himself. This is MP44 Convoy, or Optimus Prime, if indeed you prefer, and I think they look pretty marvellous together. Love how that looks. And yes, he does indeed fit in the trailer, if that's a thing that you particularly care about. And then here he is alongside his sort of mold mate, which is X-Transbots Trailbreaker. That's another third-party name that I'm not in a hurry to pronounce anytime soon, for fear of getting it slightly wrong. But here they are, and they look really good together. Really nice together indeed, because there's, although, typically, obviously, Trailbreaker and Hoist share parts of a mold anyway, these guys do look quite unique, quite different in their own little way. Which I think is really quite cool. And fair play to X-Transbots, because these cartoony versions, both of them, I'm certainly impressed with Trailbreaker so far. If anything, he's the one that's now taken the spot on my shelf so far. Spoiler alert for a cartoon accurate Masterpiece style Trailbreaker. He's really good. So hoping for the same from Hoist, but we'll see. I think what is interesting with these two is if you line them up at the front, which actually they are lined up. I know it kind of doesn't necessarily look like it from this angle, but perspective is a weird thing, isn't it? Then actually Hoist is a little bit longer, a smidge longer anyway. It's almost imperceptible. I mean, obviously he's got the old kind of junk in the trunk just here, the old tow truck bits. But actually even then there is like maybe just a couple of millimeters extra length on the end there, which is quite interesting to see. I mean, clearly there's some extensive new parts in this, which is cool. They've really gone to town on it. I like it. Then of course we've got a little Hoist off, and here you've got the X-Transbots figure, the Generation 1 toy, the original, just here, and the new Earthrise toy, just there as well. Review of which is up on the channel. And they look really good together. I'm a bit of a Hoist fan actually, I think, in a kind of bizarre way. I had the G1 toy as a kid, and back in the 80s, and absolutely love this thing. I think I never had Trailbreaker, which was obviously kind of a bigger deal in the early days of the cartoon anyway, and I don't know, just Hoist was my dude, and it's fun to see 3 versions of him just here. Actually make that 4 versions, as here we've also got Badcube's Lorry, which is this one just here on the end, another unofficial third-party attempt at the character in Masterpiece form. And we'll do a straight-up comparison with that and the X-Transbots one in just a minute, but again, really interesting to see all the different interpretations of this guy in various styles, particularly the colour difference actually. The original G1 toy, which of course again is this one just here, so second from the right, is a much lighter colour than either the Earthrise or the X-Transbots one, and a bit more of a kind of a, I don't know, do I want to say pea green? Some of you will know I'm not particularly brilliant with my colours, so you tell me what particular shade of green is that. But it's certainly a bit more vibrant, and I still don't think actually any of them are as good a colour anyway as the G1 toy. That's not me being unobjective or anything like that. That's just me literally looking at them and thinking, yes, that's nice. But still, they all look pretty good in their own way. But then let's get down to that comparison between the X-Transbots version, which is just here, and the Badcube version, which is just here. And up until now, this has been the one that has sat on my shelf as a Masterpiece-styled Hoist, and it's pretty good, actually, in vehicle mode. The transformation and the robot mode, less good, it's fair to say, but I do like the vehicle mode on this guy, and particularly like this sort of, they do actually have a metal finish on theirs on the bonnet, which looks really nice, but it's very kibbly from the underside, very kibbly. at the bottom, which is kind of the real bit that detracts from that, actually. And that is something that X-Transbots do a lot better, in my opinion. I mean, looking at these two comparatively, I think they both have their strengths. I think if you're going to go in on Badcubes, there is a lot to say about it in this mode, and certainly it's done me nicely in this form until now. But I do think that actually X-Transbots has some strengths over it as well, and they both present really well. I think it would be hard to say one is definitively better than the other, but I do think actually the lack of kibble on the X-Transbots version, that's a real plus. And I do prefer the colour orange that they've gone with here as well. This orange is, actually this colour's nice, I probably prefer this colour, but the kind of look of the plastic is a little bit better on this. I feel like this plastic here looks just a little bit, I don't want to say cheap, it's not cheap, but it's just kind of, I don't know, something about the way that it is kind of, it kind of presents is just maybe not the best. So, but yeah, you decide, up to you, which do you think looks better? And just, you know, another shot of these two, just so you can really kind of get a feel for it. Again, I do think that X-Transbots, which is obviously now this one just here, I do think that it presents maybe, you know, tidier overall. It's definitely got that, you know, that lack of kibble on the bottom side, which benefits it greatly versus Lorry. Which, you know, as I say, I do really like, but it's mostly everything sort of above the wheels that I think looks really good. But yeah, it's interesting to see, and of course there are other versions of this character out there as well. You know, Oculum-X have done one as well, for example, but I don't have that one in hand. But there you go, bit of a comparison. So a very strong showing for Hoist here in his vehicle mode, but of course now it's time to go through transformation and see how we get on with robot mode. Okay, that's transformation done, and you know, on the whole, not too bad. There's definitely a couple of fiddly bits, which I kind of remember from the first time I had this guy in hand, you know what I mean? It's not as bad as I kind of recall certain elements of it, certainly, and actually, it's very clever, you know, there are definitely some clever bits in there. It's just, yeah, there are some fiddly elements too. I think the main thing for me is how the backpack comes together is very fiddly indeed. Just not necessarily in principle, but just in terms of execution, there's just like a lot of getting things exactly lined up in order to kind of compact and sit in the right place, and yeah, that's a little bit annoying. But actually, you know, the way the legs come together and things like that, and the arms as well, very, very clever indeed. You've got to hand it to them. Particularly as, you know, I do think the Hoist is probably a very difficult design to kind of get right. I mean, certainly, you know, Badcube, their attempt, this is way simpler than that, do you know what I mean? And if anything, like a little bit more slick, or definitely more slick in terms of how it transforms, just like a lot more kind of straightforward, and you know, although it does have its own kind of twists and turns, it definitely gets to the point a lot faster than Badcube's efforts, so that's something. Now unfortunately I did have a little bit of drama along the way, because you can see there's this tiny little peg just in there, that little bit just there, in that sort of nook just behind the arm. It's very, very small indeed, and that's actually what holds this whole backpack kind of section onto the main body. It kind of slides in at the bottom and then hooks or pegs on just there. And this piece is fine. Unfortunately on this side, there's a little pin that holds it in. There you go, you can see it's just missing altogether, and you can see actually the little white peg hole just in there. There's a little pin that holds that little kind of tab section on with the peg on it, and the pin came out halfway through transformation. I actually did get it in initially, and then I heard something hit the floor and I was like, what is it? And looked and realized it was the pin from that little bit that just kind of slid out, and lo and behold, that whole kind of little piece has followed suit. So I've popped them to one side. I have had a quick go at putting them back in, but it's not easy at all because the pin kind of slides in at a very tight angle, so I'm going to need to give it a proper go later and see if I can sort that out. But yeah, super annoying. I mean, certainly the last thing you want when you're transforming something like this is bits falling off, right? Like when they're not meant to anyway, like, you know, other than ball joints or whatever. But it's really, really not a great indictment. I mean, to be honest, it's not the end of the world, and actually the backpack, to be fair, does still feel quite stable on there. So even without that little kind of hook, you know, it's really not a major drama by any means, but it's a bit unfortunate. Just one of those little things, I guess. You know, but I'm not going to let it overshadow too much, because actually I do like a lot of what the transformation does here. And you know, besides a few kind of clearances along the way and whatever, as I say, very clever on the whole. And I do like the result. I think that this is a really nice looking robot mode, and certainly very reminiscent of the character, probably actually to a greater degree than we've seen from any of the other third-party options. You know, I feel like they've really kind of nailed the, not just the look, but the feel of the character, like, as well, because he's a bit of an awkward dumpy lad, isn't he? He's not kind of your typical square-jawed, you know, heroic sort of jock type. And I really feel like they've kind of captured that quite nicely, actually. He's a bit of a sort of, you know, an alternate hero, let's say. And yeah, I feel like they've done a good job with the proportions and the kind of general look. It's all kind of, you know, nice and on point, and actually fairly tidy as well. I mean, again, you know, if you kind of take a look at that back, you know, yes, it is kibbly, like, obviously. I mean, by its very nature, by the kind of inherent design, there is kibble going on, but it's really not so bad at all. I mean, if anything, that's just Hoist design, isn't it? That's just kind of what you would expect. That's kind of what you signed up for when you decided to get a toy of this character. Now, the head sculpt is really working for me on the whole, gotta say. Really like the general look of it. Again, it kind of captures the character with that kind of awkward majesty that he has. Really like the very vibrant blue visor that he's got as well. And I think, yeah, it does a good job. I like it. Of course, he's got all his usual little kibble. Do you know what I mean? All his stuff at the back here, like that little, you know, little projector weapon in the middle, and then the two little antenna. And yeah, I think it looks decent. The arm that this piece is on looks a little bit thin, if anything, but you know, it's all kind of as it should be, I suppose. All of the chest section and everything there looks exactly as you would expect it to, you know, obviously based on his vehicle mode and everything else. It looks really, really nice. And again, kind of really showcasing that nice finish that it's got on that top of that bonnet. And the arms look really good too. Again, really unusual arms on this guy, but I think they work nicely here. I think a large part of that is how they've handled these flaps on the back of his arms, which are always a bit of a weird one in some designs, aren't they? But you know, here they're really not overcomplicated anyway. They're just kind of folded up a notch from the vehicle mode, and then obviously they just kind of sit there, and they will kind of fan out to the side with the arm. But actually, that really works for me. You know, I'm liking how they've solved it. They've not overcomplicated it, as I say, and fair play, it works. Now, the legs, of course, on this design do look a little bit odd, but then in fairness, it's as I say, of quite a surprisingly faithful recreation of Hoist from the cartoon. I mean, the orange here does look a tiny bit plain maybe, but again, it is what it is. It's kind of matching the cartoon design. These hip flaps are a bit of a strange one. Massive, massive hip flaps, but again, they kind of cover a bit of hollow space behind that, if anything. And then he's got these kind of pipe-ish legs, which, again, you know, it is accurate to the source. So do you like the look of it? I don't know, but it's kind of one of those, again, where it's cartoon accuracy. There's always this debate, isn't there? It's like, is cartoon accuracy good if it doesn't actually look good? And I'm sure this probably pushes the boundaries of that for some people. For me, this is what I probably would have wanted from it. So, and in that regard, you know, I could say this is a bit of a success. Now, of course, a big difference here is some of the colours, like with these white sections just here, which was silver on the original release. And then coming down here, you've got toes, these metal toes, actually, they're die-cast. which are white again, but then they've got this green paint over the front of it to kind of make it the right colour. And you can see already mine's got a few chips in the paint just there, and a little bit of scuffing just on the bottom. That's really not the cleanest at all, and it's unfortunate. I think it was like that out of the box. I don't think that was me, but yeah, it's not a great look. And you know, if anything, that's a bit of a shame, because actually the rest of the toy presents very nicely. I mean, you know, you've got some obviously lots of bare plastic and whatever else, but where there is paint, it seems fine. It's just literally that one foot. Even the other foot actually looks way better. So it's a bit of a strange one, I guess. It's just one of those little anomalies maybe. But, you know, as I say, overall, the finish is very nice. Just that one toe. Now, the good news is that all those joints feel super stiff. I mean, this guy does feel very solidly put together, and certainly no concerns with the joints whatsoever. And in terms of articulation, firstly, at the head, you get very decent range all round. And there is actually a separate little neck joint, which helps him to look up quite a bit. I don't think he can necessarily look down. But it's very stiff, that neck joint. Initially, I thought it was just the joint, which is the hinge for transformation, which would have been a little bit disappointing. But there is actually, there we go, a separate neck joint as well. It's just exceptionally stiff. Now, as already mentioned, the arms and all of the joints feel super tight. Now, they will fan out to the side. They're on these kind of little ratchet sort of systems in there to fan out sideways. And then there's a separate joint that allows them to rotate around as well. And there's lots of articulation there. It can go all the way around, which is really good. And it can go to 90 degrees at the side as well. So plenty of articulation. Where there is a little bit less is at the elbow, because you can get to just under 90 sort of hinge there, and there is then a bicep swivel out to the side, so that's absolutely fine. Really like the hands actually. These 3 fingers are on one piece, and then this finger, the forefinger, is on a separate piece. They don't articulate the fingers themselves, but they just articulate at one point at the knuckle, so that's fine. And then the thumb is on a ball joint and then has a hinge just at the kind of main knuckle as well, so you get quite a decent bit of articulation out of that. And then of course there is a wrist swivel as well. And then you get a bit of waist swivel action just there. That's very good. Now at the legs, you're probably going to get a lot more articulation than you might bank on actually with a design like this. Now of course you can just move those hip flaps out of the way. You can see what I'm talking about with the old hollowness there just behind the hip flap. These side flaps will move out of the way as well. Not the prettiest, but doesn't really bother me, to be honest. Particularly as even with the hip flap down, that leg goes all the way up like so. So it's really, visually it's not such a problem, to be honest. So, and you can just move it a little bit more if you want, and you get maybe just to 90 degrees bend at the hip. So that's fine. And then actually at the knee, these are very solid ratchets at the knee. They move just on the top of this orange piece just there, and you get just past 90. So that's pretty decent. And then at the ankle, you get a nice bit of ankle tilt all the way, which is cool. And then you will actually get, I didn't mention it before, but you get, because of that hip, you do get a bit of rotation in the leg as well. So yeah, all told, he ends up feeling quite articulated actually. I mean, he's not the most dynamic bot ever, and he does have his quirks to him, like some, kind of awkward stances or whatever. But actually, I really like generally how this thing articulates. I think it's pretty good. And certainly for Hoist, that's about as dynamic as I need him to be, realistically, given the character and everything. So, right, well, let's check out some of those hand replacements anyway, those little accessories. And actually, you need to slide the hand off, which is, from memory, there we go, a bit of a pain to do, but it just sort of slides off at the joint like so. I kind of wish that it would fold in and it was a little bit more, I don't know, elegant than that, but there you go. And then, of course, same method, you just want to slide on some of those accessories. Very tight. There we go, until it kind of feels like it is in the right place. Yeah, you really have to kind of slide it on quite tightly, but there you go, that's it done. And there we go, that's the kind of classic Hoist look. That's what he has on his, often in the cartoon, on his animation model or whatever. Typically on the other hand, actually, but there you go. Got it on this hand for now anyway. And actually what's quite cool about these, there are 2 of them, weirdly. I don't know why you would necessarily want 2, but you can have 2 if you want. You can have one on either arm. What is quite cool about them is that they actually fold up. This bit here, there's a little hinge just in it that folds round. So you can keep them on for transformation, I believe, as well. So there you go, that's kind of a nice little feature. Should you prefer, then he's got his little hammer, which is also another little cartoon nod, actually. He does use that in the cartoon to bang out metal and what have you. Or, perhaps when he's feeling a little bit judgy. Now, we're not quite done, as there are obviously more hand attachments. Now, in theory, to install them, what you want to do is just actually fold the hand away, just like you would for transformation. Except here's the thing, you should then be able to install this piece on the end of the arm. As you can see, it's got a little nub just there to sort of tab it in, except there's nowhere for it to go. Absolutely nowhere for it to go. The end of that arm is completely smooth. And yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but it's a very, very strange thing. Nowhere for this piece to go whatsoever. You will not be able to attach it to the arm. And I was first alerted to this actually on Twitter. Someone that I know on Twitter had this problem or discovered this when they got this guy out of the box and couldn't figure it out. And so was kind of asking, hey, does anybody know? And it turns out other people have had the same problem, and no one knows. No one can figure it out. I've asked a couple of people, I've asked around, and it seems like everyone's a bit clueless on it. I can't find the answer. I don't know what to tell you, but there is no way to install it onto this arm whatsoever. And so it's kind of an oddity. I don't know, is it just an oversight or what's going on with it? I don't know. If you have the answer and you know what it is, then please do message me and I'll put it in the description or something for this video. But as of now, no way to connect that piece onto there, so it's just kind of useless. And that actually goes for this piece as well, which is you actually get two of these in the box, as you saw. And these are little adapter pieces, which in theory is very cool because these are for Masterpiece ratchet. You can some of his weapons you can add onto there. Basically any of his parts can attach onto there. It's the kind of same connector part that goes with ratchet, and then you should be able to use that as like an adapter to attach those weapons onto old Hoist here as well. But of course, cannot be done. Now, in terms of other accessories, of course, you've got the alternate head, and this slides on exactly the same way as the hands, just that little peg just there. This is a wee bit fiddly to get on, just because the actual panel that the peg is on kind of moves as well, but there you go, toy head. And I do actually really like how that looks. It's very, very G1 toyetic, it really kind of has that vibe, and it does look cool. Ultimately, it's not for me because I'm going to go for the cartoon look, but if this is what you want, there it is. Now, of course, that's not the only head-related accessory that we've got, because we've got that little mask as well from Hoist Goes Hollywood, and it very simply dear word. It very simply, what is my life about, honestly? It very simply just kind of pegs over the front like so, and yeah, there you go. Now, interestingly, old Hoist here, XTB Hoist, is not the first toy to come with one of these. Actually, we've had a few. We've had actually official one with Masterpiece Sunstreaker. DX9 did one with their Power Glide, and Fans Toys as well did one with their Warpath, which of course you can see just here. But failing that, you can use the second one that X-Transbots have given you in the box just here as well. If you want a bit more of a consistent look across two characters like these, then there you go. Scene recreation at its finest. Now, actually, the instructions do show that it can go on Masterpiece tracks, so there you go. You can use it on him as well if you prefer. Alternatively, there is this little accessory as well, the solar power tower, which is, I don't know, it's just kind of there, I guess. I mean, of course, it's one that him and Grapple build in the cartoon as a little kind of mini model of the larger thing, and yeah, it's there. I mean, I guess it's a little bit of a weird one because we actually have already had this particular accessory done in Masterpiece form officially by Takara Tomy, which is this one, which actually comes with Masterpiece Grapple. And dare I say, it looks way, way better. Way, way better. The moulding is much nicer. The orange looks really good. It's just better. I don't know what to tell you, but it's just better. So then seeing this thing, which just feels like a bit of a kind of cheap knockoff, if anything. I don't know, it's just kind of, I mean, it's not an important accessory by any means, but just, I don't know. Yeah, get the official one. So yeah, realistically very strange, because actually a lot of the accessories end up being a bit kind of redundant. Like if you don't want the toy head, rule that out. I mean, it depends if that's your bag or not, but if it's not, then it's not. There's the accessories for the hand that don't work because there's no peg for them, so rule those out. There's the solar power tower, which has already been done officially, and I think, realistically, a lot of people anyway will have gone in on the official Grapple and will have that with him. So that isn't, I mean, it's not redundant, but it kind of feels maybe a little bit superfluous, if anything. You've got the arms accessory, the kind of duck arms accessory thing for the vehicle mode, which doesn't work particularly well. You've got the crane arm, which actually does work, so that's cool. And then you've got the other little accessories for the hand, they work well. But, it's a lot of stuff in the box. I just don't know how much of it actually adds up to much, if I'm being completely brutal. Which brings us nicely onto some comparisons. And of course, here you can see him first of all with Masterpiece Grapple himself. And yeah, I think it's interesting because they don't fit perfectly together. Like, if I'm being really honest, you know what I mean? They do look all right together. They do look, they don't look bad. But yeah, there is a little bit of variance. And I think actually for me, what's kind of killing it ever so slightly is the orange, because on grapple, you have this really nice kind of, you know, heavily painted finish, which just, I love. Do you know what I mean? In hand, I think is absolutely glorious. Really beautiful paint scheme on this guy. Very vibrant too. And then on Hoist, you have this kind of unpainted, slightly drab orange by comparison. And I think if anything, it's just kind of highlighting that maybe it doesn't look as premium as perhaps it could. But you know, actually in terms of the basic designs, they do fit very nicely, and they both do, I mean, clearly obviously grapple, but they both kind of represent the cartoon characters very well. So I guess it depends how well that works for you. And then because it's the law to have some sort of Optimus comparison in these sorts of reviews, here he is with the Transform Element Op Leader review, which is also on the channel. Very nice toy, and indeed stylistically I think these two work pretty well together. I think, you know, they've both kind of got that slightly cartoony look, and I think it works. Then here he is with a couple of Masterpiece Carbots. You've got Sideswipe, Sunstreaker, Wheeljack, and Hound, all official toys. And I think this is interesting because, you know, again, the slightly, you know, the unpainted orange finish is kind of killing it for me slightly. Do you know what I mean? Just versus some of the official toys, I think you can sort of see that difference. But otherwise, I think it works pretty well. But yeah, just that orange, I'm kind of becoming more aware of it now, I guess, in comparison to these sorts of toys. And then here he is with some of the 1985 crew, some of the mini-bots at least. We've already had Warpath, and now here you have DX9 Powerglide, X-Transbots Sea Spray and Cosmos, and Fans Toys Beachcomber, all of which I love. And yeah, I think that actually works pretty well. I think he looks very nice alongside these guys. There's just something about 1985, that lineup of bots that just appeals to me. I don't know, just the kind of not your average set of heroes, you might say. And lo and behold, these guys look great. And then here he is with his mold mate, kind of anyway. His sort of shares a mold with X-Transbots Trailbreaker. And it's interesting, these two, because yeah, they do have the same base design, clearly. I mean, when you handle them, there's no doubt that they share a lot of engineering, but actually they're about as similar as, well, I was going to say Masterpiece Grapple and Inferno, but actually probably even less similar than those two. Do you know what I mean? Those two only share about 50% of parts, which I always think is really interesting. These guys, huge amounts of uniqueness between the two of them. Do you know what I mean? It's really interesting to see. I mean, clearly they do share parts, like the bonnet, you know, the shoulders you can see are the same, just in a different color. Although actually, even then, there are a couple of moulding differences. Actually, there are some little circles and you know, details on Hoist that are not there on Trailbreaker, so that's interesting. But you know, they have, I think, actually less in common than they do, if that makes sense. So I think good job X-Transbots at making these two feel very unique. Obviously, Trailbreaker is even taller than Hoist, so there you go. And but it's interesting that they do still, as I say, they share engineering. So like the way that the arms, the lower arms transform is the same in theory, although actually all of the plastic and the molding is different. So it's really, really interesting, and I like that they've gone to such detail on these guys. Of course, I've still got the sort of toyetic head on Trailbreaker. I'll need to swap that back soon, but it's interesting to see. I do think, though, just quickly, that actually the finish on Trailbreaker is better. I think that they did, you know, the chasm between the original Trailbreaker release and this one feels bigger than the Hoist. So that is what I would say on these two. And there he is with a bit of a Hoist lineup. We've got the Generation 1 toy on the left and the Earthrise toy on the right, of course. And pretty good to see, isn't it? As I said, I already love this character. So fun to see him in all different variations, of course. And adding another one to the mix, of course, then we've got the old Badcube version as well. But a bit of an oddity that he is, but there you go. We've got 4 Hoists all represented. Just interesting to see how different these versions of the character can be, you know, all to represent the same character, and they're so different. And then here's a bit of a closer up inspection of the 2 third-party efforts. You've got, again, X-Transbots on the left, Badcube on the right, and it's interesting to see them because, you know, when I first got Badcube's effort, there was a lot that I was never like in love with it, but I did kind of think, okay, yeah, no, I can see what they're going for here. And actually, as time has gone by, I have found myself wanting another take on that character. And I don't think that the X-Transbots version is perfect. I mean, clearly it has a couple of kind of QC issues, you know, they're just, you know, small little things, but still they add up. And at the same time, you know, the finish is maybe not quite what I would have wanted it to be, but the design is really good. And I do think that they've kind of nailed the character in a kind of non-fussy way that I think actually Badcube just can't quite claim. You know, it's a complicated design, and it's a little bit it's very over-engineered in many ways. And for me personally, I kind of feel like maybe X-Transbots is going to take this one on my shelf. And you know, when you see them lined up next to each other versus the animation model, I think that the cartoon accuracy of X-Transbots effort becomes that much more clear. Do you know what I mean? And it's, I mean, even obvious stuff like the legs, but just generally the kind of body shape and whatever else, they've just kind of captured that weird and wonderful majesty that is Hoist. I really feel like they've kind of done that in a way that the Badcube effort maybe can't quite claim. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, for me, X-Transbots sitting pretty on this one at the moment. In conclusion then, where are we up to with this guy? Well, there's a lot to say, isn't there? Because he's definitely not perfect. I mean, I really love the vehicle mode. The transformation actually on the whole is fairly fluid. I mean, a couple of kind of complicated bits, but not too bad. And I do like the design of the robot mode. I'm annoyed by some of the little QC errors. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, you've got the scuffed paint on the foot. You've got the little tab that's come off in the backpack, which is really, really annoying. The little pin that's come out there, and then of course you've got stuff like the the hand with the accessories that can't even be used. Which, what is that? Do you know what I mean? That's just bizarre. Stuff like that just shouldn't happen, frankly. And you've got little kind of problem with the arm accessory as well, the little claw thing. So I mean, it all adds up. It's all tiny stuff in some senses, but it's annoying nonetheless. For a company that's supposed to be kind of on an upswing, it's not what you want to see. That said, I do, as I say, I really like the design of this. I wish that the finish on the orange was maybe feeling like a little bit more premium, but on the whole, it's a fun design. I do like it. I'm maybe going to stop short of being like, it's a toot. Do you know what I mean? Often it's a toot or boot at this time. And it's definitely not a boot, but it's not like a full-on toot either. It's kind of like a very reserved, mild toot, if anything, like it's a toot. But what are your thoughts on this guy? Do you like what you see? Not like what you see? Would really love to hear your opinions in the comments below. Also really interested in your feedback, as I said, on the look of today's video. Do you like the new look? Are you not so keen? Would you rather go back to the grey thing that we had before? Completely up for your feedback. Would love to hear it. So also don't forget to drop me a like. It really helps me out and gets more people to see the video. So that's really appreciated. If you could do that for me, just click the like there. And as I said, I will put a link to TF Source's listing for this guy in the video description below. Again, you can go ahead and order him now. He's in stock, I believe, so do check him out. So see that below. Otherwise, that's it from me. So enjoy the rest of your day, and TTFN.